Despite its childish and wildly immature nature, Talking with Dinosaurs is not intended for children. It has blasphemy, sweary words, sexy talk, and bad thoughts. And while care has been taken to keep information as accurate as possible, paleontology is an ever-growing field with new data and theories constantly changing how we see these prehistoric monsters, so we make no guarantees about accuracy. Not that it matters, paleontologists are just making it all up as they go along anyway. Also to my mum, I'm still very, very sorry. Kia ora, welcome back to Talking with Dinosaurs, the world's #1 not safe for work comedy dinosaur podcast hosted by a New Zealander. It's that time once again, your favourite part of insert time period since the last episode here. This episode, I'm afraid to say, we're going off book and we're throwing the normal format out of the window. And this time, it's not because of dinosaur genitals. You'll be shocked and horrified to discover that this week, we're starting with a question. I know, I'm sorry, please, forgive me. Feel free to sit down, take a minute, do some controlled breathing, everything is going to be okay. Alright, now that you're ready, this week's first question is from Ashley, who asks, when the heck are you going to talk about Parasaurolophus, the most magical of the hadrosaurs, and definitely the dinosaur I would ride if I were living in Dinotopia? Well, Ashley, funnily enough, I am talking about Parasaurolophus this episode, and it's totally a coincidence. You absolutely did not influence me to write about the coolest, most iconic hadrosaur, and the dinosaur most regarded as the tootiest. As such, you own no rights to this episode. Any attempts to litigate will be met with crying and curling up in the fetal position, as they always are. Now, if you don't recognise the name Parasaurolophus, you would definitely recognise the dinosaur, and if you can't pronounce the name, I don't blame you. I practiced it for about an hour before recording the episode, and I'm still not 100% I'm getting it right. I know I mispronounce a lot of the words on here, but believe me, I do try. The good thing, though, is that I can totally blame all of my slip-ups on my accent, and not on the fact that my brain doesn't always word goodly. Parasaurolophus is well known for the big old dong growing backwards out of its head, making it look like it was walking away from an explosion in a sex toy factory in that cool slow-motion way they do in movies. But one of the dildos was launched at high speed into the back of its skull, leaving it permanently attached. And given that Parasaurolophus is almost 10 metres long, that faux wiener could end up to be as long as I am tall. 1.8 metres. That's 6 feet for those of you who use measurements that make less sense than I do after I dap my head into a vat of liquid LSD. Or even before I do that, I'm not always the most coherent. So what was this magnificent dorsal dong used for? For once, paleontology may have an actual answer. An answer they used actual science to get rather than just getting pissed drunk and making it up, Chicago Improv style. And I don't even mean the good Chicago Improv, no Second City or IO Theatre or anything. I'm talking improv that wouldn't even get invited to perform on Hello from the Magic Tavern. Nah, I'm just kidding. Magic Tavern's great, and if you ever want a guest with a very distinctive Kiwi accent, feel free to hit me up. I swear I don't sound this wooden when I'm bouncing off other people. Please call me back, ARNIE. Where was I before I started pitifully begging for a guest appearance on another podcast? Oh yeah, there have been heaps of theories as to what that weird crest on Parasaurolophus' head was for. Early paleontologists, with their obsessions that all dinosaurs were at least semi-aquatic, decided it was some kind of snorkel, and maybe somewhere to hold extra air so they could stay underwater. These ideas were terrible. Later scientists believe they were probably just for sexual displays, because sometimes creatures evolve weird shit to get laid. I mean, this was almost definitely correct, because that's what species do. But after a particularly well-preserved skull was found, a full 3D model reconstruction could be made of it and all of its weird chambers. And you know what they found? You could doot a mean tune out of that skull. Chambers in the skull's crest linked up to the nostrils, allowing air to pass through and resonate and making Parasaurolophus sound loud as hell. This would have been perfect for children calling to parents or as mating calls. Children, with their smaller tutors, would have made higher, easier to hear calls to get their parents' attention when they needed something. And the much deeper sounds adults made would carry much further, making it easier to communicate danger, or an invitation to Dino Bonetown, population 2. Or more. I'm not here to yuck any extinct yums. There are recordings available of the sound of the Parasaurolophus all over the internet, but unfortunately, due to out-of-date, useless copyright law, I can't play them to you without permission, and every time I contact real paleontologists to ask them for something for this stupid ding-dong podcast, well, If they do reply, they're usually not the most polite, so we might just have to leave that one. Some paleontologists even believe that it was sexually dimorphic, which long-term listeners will remember means that there were physical differences between the sexes, in this case in the crest size, and not that it transformed into a spider when it had sex. Disappointing, I know. Parasaurolophus was found throughout North America through the late Cretaceous, but apparently not commonly, as bugger all of them have actually been found. Thankfully, about 7 complete skulls exist, which is pretty decent, but still, come on. I get that it's more than Therizinosaurus, but you gotta work harder at that calcification, Parasaurolophus. 6 points. Oh, that's right, I actually do rate these things. I'd probably give these big boner heads 6 dickheads out of 7. That sounds fair to me. Now, after the break, we're back with the question section, like the proper one. Not at the start this time.
This is Kim, your friendly neighborhood ER nurse. I'm the host of People Are Wild, the only podcast that claims to bring medical entertainment, medutainment, on a weekly basis. I can be found on your favorite podcast listening app, iTunes and Google Play, and you can talk to me on Twitter at People Are Wild.
Welcome back. It's the question section, where we will start off with asking another of Ashley's questions. Following on from the last question, Ashley asks, speaking of Dinotopia, when are you going to talk about it? Well, Ashley, all in good time. Maybe not this episode, maybe not next, but one day. And finally from Ashley, we have, if you could design your own dinosaur a la Fallen World Mad Scientist, what features would you give it? I feel like I've answered this before, or something similar, and I'm pretty sure I said Ankylosaurus because it's already perfect. I have, however, recently come to realise that this, of course, is simply not true. As amazing as Ankylosaurus is, it could always be improved. For example, it could have fully functional wings, a chainsaw on its club tail, or a giant dong growing out of its head. Then it would be the perfect dinosaur. Now we have another final question this week as well, this one from someone else. This one comes from all the way from St. Gallen, Switzerland. Instagram user Uncle Sesame asks, on your episode on Dimetrodons, you mentioned that they were possibly sexually dimorphic, but only in a way where the males were slightly larger than the females. No titties. I was wondering, is there a dinosaur or pterosaur or anything similar that showed more extreme sexual dimorphism? Also, dinodongs or pteranodon titties? Well, let's start with the more important question first. Dinodongs. I mean, obviously, have you heard this podcast? It goes without saying. As for sexual dimorphism, well, that's really hard to tell. As I mentioned before, Parasaurolophus may have had different crests depending on its biological sex, but we don't know. In fact, we're not sure about any sexual dimorphism in dinosaurs. The one we're most certain of is Apatosaurus and Diplodocus, which had strengthened vertebrae in about 50% of known specimens, which allowed it to hold up its tail longer, probably to aid in getting down. A 50-50 split makes it pretty clear that this was a case of dimorphism, but we still can't be sure. It's all conjecture, because most sexual dimorphism is found in soft tissues which don't preserve well. And to be honest, sexual dimorphism is often less than individual variation anyway. But thanks for that, Uncle Sesame. You can check out his SoundCloud too, also under Uncle Sesame. He has some fresh beats, as I believe the kids are calling it these days. And now for our final section, great contributions to dinosaur science by non-paleontologists. Because fuck those guys. This week's great contributor is... oh goddamn, Ashley, did you rig this? It's James Gurney, creator of Dinotopia. Alright, Ashley, you win this round. Gurney was an illustrator for National Geographic, recreating lost cities for them to pepper their articles with. Inspired by the popularity of his creations in Nat Geo, he created a couple of prints of imagined cities, Waterfall City and Dinosaur Parade. These prints proved to be wildly successful, so he took a year or so off from freelancing illustrations and wrote and illustrated a book about a utopian society of dinosaurs and humans, living together in peace on a hidden island. It's beautiful and definitely worth checking out. There's an elaborate plot about hidden underground networks and ancient civilizations, but the art alone is worth checking out. It was one of my favourites as a kid, and it should be one of yours now. I'm sure it's inspired many young paleontologists to take up the spade? I don't know, what would you use to represent paleontology? Whatever. That's about all the time we have for today. Special thanks as usual to the fantastic Electricity who created the awesome theme song. Check him out on SoundCloud under Electricity NZ, there's a link in the description. And to Adam Underfoot Donahue who created the awesome logo and came up with the great contribution segment. You can tell because it has an actual name and it's actually pretty good. As usual, feel free to drop us a line on Instagram at Talking with Dinosaurs or Twitter at Talking Dinocast. There's also the Facebook group Talking with Dinosaurs Dinophiles Anonymous. You can email me at talkingwithdinosaurs@gmail.com. And now we've got our own Discord server, Talking with Dinosaurs. The link is in the Facebook group, or just flick me a message anywhere you can and I'll pass you an invite. Thank you all for being so supportive. If you want to support the show, tell someone who would like it about it. Take them on a log car trip, make them listen to a few episodes. They'll be hooked, I'm sure. I'm magical and, I'm just really appealing to everyone, I think. Especially people who don't like dinosaur penises. There's also a donation link I've mentioned a couple of times now. Now, I do always ask you to donate to a local museum first, and some people have asked why. Today, that was 3rd of September 2018, for those of you listening later, in Rio de Janeiro, the National Museum burned to the ground. Inside were millions of irreplaceable specimens, artworks, and items of great historical and scientific value. Contributing greatly to the fire was the fact that the building was in dire need of maintenance that they couldn't afford because they were critically underfunded. And even in my relatively well-off area of the world, my local museum was closed indefinitely due to structural integrity issues. A lack of funding is destroying our links to our history, and if we don't do anything about it, our natural and cultural histories could be erased forever. So please, if you are able, and only if you're able, I don't expect people who can't afford to donate, but donate to your local museums. They're often in more dire states than you realise, and even if they're not, a little extra funding is going to the right place. Now, with that dour warning, that's this episode done. I've been Stefan Ato, and we've been talking with dinosaurs.